Both Ukraine and Russia have claimed that hundreds of enemy troops have been killed over the past 24 hours in the battle for Bakhmut. A Ukrainian military spokesperson said 221 pro-Moscow troops were killed and more than 300 wounded. Meanwhile, Russia's defence ministry said up to 210 Ukrainian soldiers were killed in the broader Donetsk part of the front line. Well, joining us now is retired Air Vice Marshal Sean Bell, who is with us. A very good afternoon to you. So what's the significance of both these sides claiming so many casualties in this battle?
Yeah, it's highly unusual, isn't it? But if we look at, let's look at the sort of overall picture at the moment. There's over 1,200 miles of front line, and although we'll come back to Bakhmut, there is fighting all the way along this front line. Down in Kherson, down to the southwest there, the Russians are firing from the east side of the Dnieper River into Kherson, and overnight there were 3 innocent civilians going shopping that were killed. And also from Zaporizhzhia to Volodar here, although there's no movement on the front line, the Russians are digging in. There's loads of shelling backwards and forwards in there. But as you say, the main fighting really is around Bakhmut. We've been talking about this the last 6 months, huge casualty figures as part of the Russian offensive. And if we zoom in at the moment, just have a quick look at the city itself of Bakhmut. The river, the Bakhmut River through here, now it looks like Russia occupies the eastern side, the Ukrainians on the western side, but it's slightly more complicated than that because the Russians are doing a pincer around the top and the bottom, aiming to try to cut off this resupply route, the 504, down to the southwest. As you say, the one strange thing about this is, although we've been reporting huge casualties, both sides don't normally account. They're talking about 220-odd deaths over the last 24 hours. It looks likely that Russia are doing this for their domestic audience. They know full well that they've taken huge casualties and they'll be wanting to demonstrate that they can also inflict the same on Ukraine. But Ukraine has to be really careful here to getting dragged into a war of attrition, because the issue here is Russia is a much larger country than Ukraine. It's got significantly more resources, significantly more manpower and equipment, and it's pretty clear that Putin doesn't care about the loss of human life. So Russia wants to drag Ukraine into a war of attrition, which Russia will know it can win. Now, in the First World War, we had massive wars of attrition. In the West, at the end of that, didn't have the appetite for those sorts of casualties again. So they developed this manoeuvre warfare where you use technology to try to limit the number of casualties you have. And of course, the West's weapons have proven completely decisive so far in the battle. The challenge for the West, though, or particularly for Zelensky, is this battle is personal. So let's look at Bakhmut from that strategic perspective. From a military perspective, this is not a significant objective, but it's become highly symbolic between both Zelensky and President Putin. And the challenge, therefore, even US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and the US military, using diplomatic language, have said to President Zelensky, you probably need to be pulling your forces out of Bakhmut and saving them for another day. Whereas actually President Zelensky has done entirely the opposite. He's put forces in there. Now, to be clear, from a military perspective, there's no right answer here. But the huge risk is that President Zelensky risks losing a lot of seasoned warriors, which he needs for the battles to come. We
mentioned about resources there. Ukraine needs a lot more, I guess, for the battles to come. Notably, this spring offensive, which we've heard quite a bit about in recent weeks, haven't we?
We have. Now, both sides need manpower. You remember that the Russians have mobilised 300,000 soldiers. They seem to have got through quite a lot of that. They haven't got the training capacity to do another 300,000 because it's their annual cycle of getting their conscripts in as well. There's about 400,000 a year of those. And besides, that would generate quantity, not quality, and we've already seen what happens on the battlefield. But Ukraine is also facing that same challenge. It's also having huge casualties. They need to train replacements as well. And we've heard that the Ukrainians are training 28,000 folks, which they're calling their offensive guard. Their aim will be to help liberate Ukraine. It's looking as if they'll be the backup force following the army in, and they will do the mopping up operation afterwards. Now, although the international community is helping a lot with the training task, this is still going to generate quantity, not quality. And unless Ukraine, for this forthcoming offensive, can maintain some of its seasoned campaigners, the danger is if it ends up being lots of inexperienced soldiers. The Russian experience has just showed what a price you pay for inexperience on the battlefield.
Good news. All right, Sean, thank you for that.